This Sunday, a mentorship forum. 3 panelists, 1 big purpose. Under the theme, Unlocking Your Potential. The guest speakers, Dr. Gladys Ngetich, Rhodes Scholar and Schmidt Science Fellow, Carol Koech, Country President, Schneider Electric East Africa, and Dr. Peggy Kemei, Senior Lecturer, University of Nairobi, Faculty of Health Sciences. Moderated by Mark Obar Aswela, former digital journalist, Standard Group. Join us this Sunday, 4th December, from 4 to 6:30 p.m. live on YouTube. This
and do have a good evening. My name is Mark Obar Aswela. Today we are on a mentorship program known as Skl Mentorship Programme. And it's important for us to let you know that we have very well accomplished engineers and a doctor in the panel who will be introducing themselves in the next few minutes. But yes. Okay. Sorry for that. And now it's important for us to understand that we have a panel here, and we have Mrs. Carol Koech. We have Dr. Gladys Ngetich. Sorry, not Ngetich, but Ngetich. And then we have Dr. Peggy Kemei. Now, they will be introducing themselves. But one thing that you need to know is that today, in today's world, mentorship is very much key, because there are a lot of challenges that we face at various stages of our lives, whether it's at the stage of growing up, at the stage of adulthood, at the stage of doing business, in leadership. These ladies have seen it all, and they are ready to share their stories and let us know their experiences and how they overcame the challenges that they faced up to where they are today. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'll start with you, Mrs. Carol Koech. You will introduce yourself and give us a bit of a background of where you came from in terms of where you were born and how you grew up to date. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mark. I'm really honored to be here this evening and this time with you. So I was born in Kericho, but I grew up in Olenguruoni and went to the local primary school, Simotwet Primary School, and then I went to Tengecha High School, and then I later went to the University of Nairobi, where I studied electrical and electronics engineering. And then after the university, I spent a lot of my time doing different roles. And then I went back to do my master's at Strathmore Business School. And I'm currently studying for my PhD. So I'll soon earn the doctor title. Very, very honored. So at the moment, I'm working as a country president for Schneider Electric in East Africa. Schneider Electric is an energy management and industrial automation company. And I manage the operations for East Africa.
Thank you so much, Carol. Welcome, Dr. Gladys, to the panel. And may you just introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Mark. And it's a privilege to be sharing this stage with Carol and Peggy. By way of introduction, I was born and raised in Olenguruoni, in a place called Amalo Village. I went to local primary school like Carol. My primary school is called Lelai Bay Primary School. And then later on, I did my KCP 2004. And one interesting fact that many people know about me is that I had 45% in English and 298 marks in 2004. And that led me to Master Girls in Kipkelion. And after Master Girls in Kipkelion, I ended up with 80 points, A-. That took me to JKUAT. I did mechanical engineering. 2014, I cleared and then got a scholarship. I went to the University of Oxford in the UK, where I did my doctorate in aerospace engineering, and I'm currently working as a postdoctoral fellow at MIT.
That's great. That's great. We appreciate that. Welcome, Dr. Peggy. Kindly introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Mark, and thank you for having me this evening in this panel with these great ladies. I do appreciate. So I was born and raised in Kericho, and I really must say I had a privileged upbringing because I went to one of the very best schools in Kericho, that is Kericho Primary School. Then from there, I joined the Alliance Girls High School, then transitioned to the University of Nairobi, where I studied a Bachelor of Pharmacy degree. After my degree, I did my internship in a few places. Then almost soon after internship, I got a scholarship to pursue a master's degree at the University of Nairobi, where I did a master's in pharmaceutical analysis. Just as I was completing my master's degree, I got a doctorate scholarship that took me to the University of Cape Town, where I did my PhD and did a short stint in Canada while still doing my PhD. Then came back to the University of Nairobi as an academic member of staff, and that is where I am to date. And I am a senior lecturer in the Department of Pharmaceutical Chemistry, Pharmaceutics, and Pharmacognosy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Peggy. I know you will explain to us a little more about those big terminologies in medicine or in pharmacy, basically. But the most striking thing here is that we have quite a balanced panel where we have people who have picked it up from the village up to where they are, like the president, Carol, who is soon becoming a doctor. And we say, may God help you to accomplish that as fast as possible. And so to Carol, how was it like growing up in the village? Like many, in fact, majority of young Kenyans, both girls and boys, who are in the villages. How was it like for you? And what are some of the challenges that you encountered during your upbringing in the village?
Just like anyone growing up in the village, life is all about, rotates around going to school and doing chores at home and during the holidays. Mine was no different. I would say I was privileged because my parents were both teachers, and so for one reason or another, I would say we had a slightly better lifestyle, not necessarily very different. And I remember, spending a lot of time herding cows. That's what I did the most. But as I grew older, I learned to milk, and then, of course, to do all the farm activities. We had a tea farm. At that time in our village, we also grew pyrethrum and all the other crops, including maize and, vegetables. Having a mother who was a teacher meant that she would always send us home before the games time is over to go and do some work at the farm before the evening. And I never used to like these moments. But I also now realize that those created in me a lot of value in terms of working hard and really taking responsibility. So maybe that is just a good way of starting the point. And I would say my life was really no different. One of the things I would like to mention is I had a friend in primary school whose dad had a matatu. And every time the matatu would come home in the evening, the father would have a loaf of bread at the dashboard. And I would really, admire that, because for us, we would eat bread once a month when our parents would go to the nearest town to take their salary. And of course, for those that probably had parents like that would remember that that would be the day you will eat the oranges and maybe the bread that if you're lucky it gets home in full piece, a small piece of it, otherwise it would come crushed because those days the road was bad. Yeah, that was our life.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting because many people, and especially because of the setup, the social strata within our communities, is that young people growing up in the rural villages, they do not get a lot of chances in life. They probably get 1 or 2 chances, and that is probably someone paying you a fee. So if you're lucky enough to have parents who are probably teachers, like in your case, then you are really privileged. You are part of the first class of the society in as far as rural village is concerned. But now for you, Dr. Gladys, how did you overcome some of these drawbacks? And I'm asking this against the backdrop of the fact that you mentioned that something very important, that you scored very low marks, or something that would be considered low marks, especially for the running it against the position that you hold today. It would be expected that for someone to become an engineer, then you'll probably get your A's right from primary school. But from what I can see, you started from a very low point and then build up. How did you manage to build that up, and especially in reference to some of the issues that you encountered in the village?
One answer, my mom. And I like to emphasize the fact that in rural areas, or when someone is young, you are just a normal kid. You don't know what education means, what life is actually. And I don't want to pretend that I was special. I think my life was literally being run by my parents. So my dad worked away from home, so mom was the one close to us. And I think the vision she had, she didn't go to college herself. She finished high school and that was it. But the kind of vision and the dream she had for us, more so for girls, still baffles me. Because with high school certificate, and she was talking about PhD. The first time I heard of PhD was from my mom. I was actually asking her the other day if she knew what it meant, like in full, or just like basically what it meant. Yeah. But she knew that education kind of opens doors, at least she had seen, mostly for girls. If you come from the village and you study, at least you have a different kind of life. And she wanted that life for us, mostly for girls. And for sure, to answer your question, is that my parents is the reason why I overcame, or at least I thrived, or at least I made the best out of the rural setup. And so I give them 100% credit.
So, and in understanding the role of parenthood in the success of a child, what did your mother do differently that other mothers have not learned, or other parents have not really understood, to help you really to overcome such a challenge? And again, I'm going back to the fact that your story is quite inspiring. Many people will give up on a child who has scored below 200 marks, or below 300 marks, I mean. So what is it? How did they approach this issue particularly that really gave you the stepping stone?
Oh, it's a very good question. And I can summarize 2 things that I can say my parents did. And the first one is value, instillation, if that is the right word, like instilling correct values, humility, and all those things, discipline and such things. And then number 2, self-confidence. All the confidence I have or I've built over time, it started from my mom. So I grew up firstborn girl after 4 boys. And they used to bully me, not in a bad way, but in a normal kind of boys-girls relationship, especially in the village where we used to do most of the cleaning and whatever. And then they used to get, we like to say preferential treatment because of the patriarchal setup. But so occasionally would be in a debate with my brothers, and then I would want to lose hope. And then I'm like, why are you not telling your brother what you told me yesterday? Like we were debating a topic, and I feel like my brother is trying to win, and I'm trying to back down. And I'm like, no, tell him, explain to him what you told me yesterday. And I think that is teaching a kid to stand up for themselves, to know that they have something to give to the world. And I think if you teach that skill at home and you hone it at home, it will happen elsewhere. And so for me, those two things from my parents, and mostly my mom, who was mostly at home, instilling values, because with A's, my mom used to say, if you have A's and you're not disciplined, I'm not going to give you credit. And so value instillation, instilling values in the kids or in us, it's given me longer runway. It's become more sustainable, because now I'm an adult, I'm in Nairobi, my parents are in Olengruani. They don't know a single thing about what I do on a day-to-day basis, but on a day-to-day basis, all my values came from that time, and I really appreciate that. And then that self-confidence, that as a girl with 298, 15 years later, defending a PhD at the University of Oxford, because of self-confidence that they instilled, and they kind of, it got into me. And so occasionally I stand up in these big universities and I'm scared inside, but I remember what my mom used to tell me. Yeah. Stand up and say your truth, or explain what you told me yesterday, or Great. Say what you know, with confidence. You are shaking inside, but with all the confidence. So anyway, those are the two main things that I really appreciate, and I think that set them apart, and in addition, set me apart.
Okay. Very well understood. So, Dr. Peggy, even for the privileged children, there is a bag of challenges that also come with that, with being privileged in the society. I think it's very important, because even we've seen in many cases where even privileged families, children from privileged families, do falter and fall along the way. Your case is different. For example, for me, I went to high school with some of the people who came from academies, and they came with very good marks, close to 500. They're almost closing that entire capping of the marks of 500 in primary school. And then you realize that as we continued with our studies, things became quite rocky for them, and a number of them ended up failing. A number of them ended up doing well. And for some of us who probably did not get so high marks, so to speak of, but we ended up doing quite well by the end of it all in KCSE. What brings the difference? What makes one who is privileged end up doing badly, or end up doing well, continues to do well? And how can that be sustained, and especially in reference to the role of the society in the bringing up of a child?
Yeah, thanks for that interesting question. It's interesting that in the school where I was, St. Kericho Primary, we really all were privileged, because all our parents could afford it. It was a private school. It was one of the best schools. So I think what made the difference was the values, just as Gladys has said, that my parents really expected a lot from us, where my mom taught in the same school where we went to, so she would actually check every evening that we are doing our homework. And so my parents were really hands-on parents, and in as much as we were privileged, there are times, for example, they would ask the house help to step aside and let us do the chores. Of course, we didn't like it, because we are thinking, why do you want us to do this? Yeah. But now I appreciate it, and I also try to do that for my kids, because it's very important to really be functional. It's not just about academics. And I remember going to Alliance, and they used to use the quota system, where the best in every district would come in, and immediately Form 1s reported, you had the Form 2s going around asking everybody, oh, so what did you get, what did you get, what did you get? And in our time, KCPE was out of 700 marks. So I kind of felt like I was going to be, I think, the third last in my class, because when I listened to what especially the Nairobi girls had come with, somebody got 630, 610, I had 567 marks. So I kind of felt that, now I'm going to be, because I think I just knew two people who had lower marks than me. Yeah. So because I already had a good foundation with regard to values, immediately I got there, I knew I cannot sleep here, because I just saw myself being number 40 over 42. and that was hard for me. So from day one, I was already set out to give it my best. So at the end of first term, I came fourth in my class. And I mean, that was a shock that, oh, I thought these high marks. And I think that was the first realization that marks just get you to the next level. They don't keep you there. So even with and then also the other thing with Alliance is now we had exposure to everyone. Unlike primary school where we all had more or less the same kind of upbringing, I got to Alliance and there are people who'd never seen a tap, like tap water.
Yeah.
There are people who'd never seen electricity.
Yeah.
Which for us was something that was not something to discuss. It was given.
Yeah.
So it also made me appreciate the different backgrounds and just gel well with everyone. It created a lot of community in us that now we became sisters to each other. Those who had shared very well with those who didn't have. And Alliance also just reinforced the values. Our motto was walk in the light, and the teachers really taught us to walk in the light. It's interesting, I tell people that I went to a school that did not have a fence. So we were not caged. We just were taught to stay where you're supposed to be. We were allowed to walk out on Saturday. Saturday afternoon, the gates were open. If you want to walk out of the school, you go. In Form 1, it's exciting to walk out and explore. Then with time, you realize, by the way, there's nothing you're going to do out there. You may just as well do something more constructive, rest, catch up on your schoolwork. So those values actually helped me through campus, because now campus is a totally different story. There's no bell in campus. The gates are there just as gates, but nobody will stop you from walking out at 2 in the night if you so wish to walk out. But because I'd come from a background where we were taught, we learned self-discipline, just to do the right thing when nobody is watching, to walk out when you must walk out, when you've got something to go and do, not just because there's an opportunity to walk out. So I think because of that, so to answer your question, being privileged sometimes can make you very comfortable that if you're not careful, then you don't work hard. So even for the privileged, I think especially for the parents, it's very important that you keep a close eye and mentor your children, talk to them, expect high things from them. Just the fact that you're able to provide, don't just keep providing. If they lose their pencils, don't just keep replacing, because then they do not learn to be responsible. So I think my parents did that very well, and the school system also helped me on that.
And I'm coming to you, Carol, especially on the issue of laying the foundation for a child. But just to you, Dr. Peggy, how best can a society, the immediate society, the external society, indoctrinate or configure, if I use computing technology terminologies, reconfigure a child's mindset to be focused on the specific things that they need to do? Because today, unlike your time, the current world has its own challenges. There is the world of technology where all of us wallowing, and our children are introduced to it at a very early age. And it's so easy to let them get distracted. It's also so easy to use the same tools to reshape their mindsets in a manner that makes them to really focus on the right things that they need to do. How best can this really be configured within a child's mental faculty?
I think I would just say be there, be present. Because I think one of the things we are struggling with is we are delegating too much. So you find that because you've taken your kids to the best school, for example, then you think the school will do everything and you can concentrate on your other business. So you've got to be there. If it is the tech world, be there. I mean, it's very easy to say, oh, we don't understand this Generation Z or whatever it is that they are called. But then you've got to get into their space, because sometimes we are likely to condemn something, and yet it is not bad, like technology.
Yeah.
It's got its positive aspects, but because of the fears that we have, we are want to withdraw it and condemn it, and by so doing, you deny your children the positive aspects of technology. So I think it's just being present, knowing what is going on, and we live in an information age, so whatever information you need, you can find it. And also, we are still a community. You're not raising on your own, so the challenges cut across board, so keep the community.
Thank you so much. That's very important. To you, Ms. Carol, the foundational factor is very important in a child's life. And because it's this foundation that the child will stand on, I'm sure there are things that you can still trace back to your upbringing, and you can reflect them to your position that you hold today, which is quite a senior position, not only in this country, but even in East Africa generally. So just tell us, how can parents really lay a proper foundation for their children? What are some of the things to consider when laying this foundation for your child at that level? And how do you deal with resistance from a child who does not like or want that kind of a foundation? Yeah.
Very interesting question. I will not pretend to be a parenting expert, but I will share my experience,
Your personal experience.
being raised, and how those skills sort of play out today in my current role, and some of the things that I'm also doing to my own children. So I think for me, when I look at my current role, demands a lot of versatility. It demands being present, but more importantly, being able to handle many topics at the same time. And sometimes when I think about, I feel that I built that capacity because of how I grew up. I just, see things and I know they got to be done. It's not like there's no excuse. So being able to build that can-do attitude, I think was really part of growing up, because I remember, maybe let me just narrate how my day was. A typical day would be, you wake up in the morning, we were many of us. So some of us would be going in the morning to the river to fetch water. Others would be going to milk the cows. Others would be doing something else before you go to school. So you do all the chores, including cleaning the dishes before you go to school. And then, of course, you come home for lunch. Sometimes there's no one at home. You have to come and cook. And then you come in the evening, you go to the farm, you do all these things. So you learn to juggle many balls in a day. And for a 10-year-old, being able to do that becomes your normal. So when I come to the office today and I have like 10 things to deal with, my brain is just able to switch between the different topics without really feeling that I am getting overwhelmed. And I was reflecting the other day and saying, maybe if I didn't have this kind of background, I would probably be struggling with some of these realities of my current role. And just really knowing that there's nothing impossible because of just how I grew up. Sometimes, you would go to school and it used to be very cold with frost, because our school was across the river, so you would go down and up. And you're going with frost. By the time you get to school and then the sun comes up, you just feel your legs are like this. Remember, you're walking to school barefoot.
Awesome.
So those things, there's nothing to be sorry about. Those things build you as a resilient person. And so sometimes when you feel, go through some very tough days, a day that you have, some very big challenges, you just know that, okay, this will also pass. The sun will come, you'll feel the tingling, and then you will be warm. Now, to say to how to parent, I think this is a very different age of parenting, especially the technological age, but more importantly also the environment, because we forget how the environment plays a big role in who you become. But I think the parents, like Peggy was mentioning, tend to delegate the responsibility of parenting. How do the children learn from you? How do they aspire to become like their parents? And what do they learn? Because a lot of children learn by modeling. they see and they see and they do what they are seeing. So that deliberate effort to be present, to participate, to inspire helps. To be honest, sometimes when you're fully engaged, maybe in a full-time role, it's always a balance of do I provide sufficient time or do I not? And sometimes we shoot ourselves, sometimes we don't. I'm not so sure how many people are going through this, but it is always a struggle to find a balance. That's what I would say.
You know, it's very, very important that you mentioned the fact that children learn out of modeling.
Yes.
And one of the most saddening things I've watched as far as child upbringing is concerned is the fact that one day I was walking, I think I was going to work, and then somebody was dropping his child to school, and this person was smoking and holding the girl's hand, and the other hand was smoking. And I was like, what is this guy trying to do? What is he like trying to tell the society, the child, or anyone else? So that's very important that even as parents, they need to understand that children are really watching and children are learning out of that. Now to you, Dr. The fact that, and we want to go into the intricacies of mentorship, basically, but one important question that I want to ask you, especially on the foundation, one of the things that people have to deal with at some point in life is young people trying to raise resistance against life, and then at some point life must come back and raise resistance against them. And so they will always forget that they're the ones who first provoked the aggressive nature of life. And so how can you keep a young person in line to the point that they are not really distracted, or they do not really run against life or compete against life, knowing that life, they can't really overcome that? And it's because of the common challenges that we face today, and especially for the girl. And I'm saying this because you grew among many boys. One of the things that I really know is that it's so hard for a number of girls, especially in the village, to succeed. A number of them, a big percentage of them, get wasted in the village, either pregnancies, and today there are even diseases that accompany such issues. So, and even in the recent news, you just saw how many girls were giving birth during KCPE, KCSE. These are very, very painful experiences for them, and even for all of us who hear this. How should a young person really deal with such issues? Now to the young people. Yeah.
I think there is, just before I answer, because I think there is a difference in terms of solution, depending on where the person is. If it's a young person in uni, it's a different case, like young person in primary school. So which side do you want me to address?
Both.
Or in both?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I'm talking about young person in primary school, I'll go back to parents and teacher, for sure. If I got to know about sex and boyfriends and save time and all that, almost fourth year of uni. And so if I was to get pregnant, I think I would have, because I knew nothing about that. And we didn't talk, because it was kind of taboo. People still don't talk about it, which is really sad. We're just like, let's pray for our kids. And you go to church and you pray, but on Monday, she's pregnant. I think we have to talk about it. Like we have to first of all, like you mentioned, agree that it's a problem, and then we have to talk about it and like practical issues. So for young person who is like primary school, I'll say it's the parent and the teacher. From my experience, I want to say maybe I didn't get a chance to get a boyfriend and maybe get pregnant because of the way like our parents tried to, like curfew, for instance. We were not allowed to be out of the house past 6. Just kind of really, really strict kind of timing. If your girl is out, where are they? Kind of just knowing their lives, right? So anyway, I'm not a parent, but I'm talking out of experience being a kid during that time and in rural areas, because I have so many friends who became pregnant, right? So I'm not saying I knew what I was doing, but I'm giving credit again to my parents because of those curfews, because of those explaining where were you, who was that person. I remember there was a boy who was trying to vibe me in, I think, class 8. And I was smiling and giggling and drawing all the maps. And I think my mom was watching. And then she just waited and like, what was that guy telling you? It's like, oh, you know, he was trying to say whatever. And then she was like, do you want whatever he was suggesting, are you entertaining? And like, no. Then go back, tell him you are not entertaining that. And she had to stand there and watch me go. And I think it's really powerful because my mom had, being an adult, she could have gone to reprimand the boy, but she wanted me to say from my mouth, learning to say no if you are not. And so anyway, I'm just saying, when you are young in primary school and such an age downwards, it's the parent and the teacher. I'll just relegate that job to the parent and the teacher, because the 13-year-old is pregnant, they don't know what they are doing. You've never talked about sex, about boyfriends. How do you expect them to know? So it's the parents and the teacher and anyone else involved in guarding. Now for adults in university, then that's another case altogether. Like now people are grown up, they can Google, they can YouTube. In that case, I think, so just from my own experience as well, so when I was in uni, and so for adults in uni or young person in uni, I want to say maybe passion and dreams. So for me, by the time I was clearing uni, I had gotten a scholarship. And so my head was in the UK. And so anything in between, I was not entertaining. I had a boyfriend in uni, and I was like, until I go to UK, maybe once I enroll and we can get married. Anyway, things ended. But I'm just saying, I'm a big believer in talking about these things. So I have to say I was dating in campus from second year all the way to fifth year. And I remember we agreed that I'm going to the UK, I'm going to enroll at Oxford, then we can get married after 1 year or 2 years. That was our plan, but that's a story for another day.
Thank you.
But just to say, I think if you have a dream, a serious dream you are chasing, then as a young person in uni, anything should not derail you. And if things go south, and they do happen, I'm not saying they can't happen. I think there are kind of ways to go around it, as long as you have like a vision and where you are headed. So I think somehow you can still end up there.
Okay, we will come back to that at some point in this discussion. And I'm sorry that things ended. But now
thank you. Nimepoa.
Yeah, it's life. So Dr. Eric, and Dr. Peggy particularly. So I want us to begin from the very basics of mentorship. Not really the technical bits of it that we will handle at some point. But for now, I just want you to explain what mentorship is and why it's so important for any person to be mentored. And as you explain, kindly let us know if you've also been mentored by anyone and who should mentor anyone. Yes, please.
Thank you. So mentorship is really, you can call it guiding or walking together by a more experienced person who we call the mentor, working with a less experienced person who we call the mentee. It's got nothing to do with age. You may actually have a mentor who is younger than you because perhaps they've walked that road before you. And I'm actually glad that we are having this session in the presence of some of my University of Nairobi students. I'd like to acknowledge their presence. And yes, so for mentorship to work, both the mentor and the mentee should be willing to take the mentorship journey. So the mentor should be available to work with the mentee. And the mentee should also be willing to be guided, because many times when a mentor tries to walk a mentee there's resistance, as you had put it, that, yeah, that was your time. Times have changed. And sometimes also the mentors, we probably want to relive our own experiences, to correct our mistakes through our mentees. So for mentorship to work, it's got to be a two-way, it's got to be mutual. Both should be available and willing to take up the mentorship program. And sometimes I think you can mentor somebody without knowing you're mentoring them. You asked, have I been mentored? Yes, I have been mentored by very many people, starting with my own parents and my elder sister. I actually say that I think I started making decisions maybe when I was joining campus, because I'm a last born. So I've got a sister and two brothers, and more or less before campus, I really did what my sister had done. So when it got to choosing schools, she too had gone to Alliance, so I just chose what she had done. So she really mentored me. But when it now got to campus, I think that's where I drew the line, because she's a medical doctor, and I really feared blood. I didn't want to see blood at all, so I didn't want to do medicine. So my first mentors were members of my family. Then came the teachers, and teachers are usually very good mentors because they bring out the positive energy. I mean, they identify your strengths and actually say them. So my teachers, right through from primary, really mentored me through campus. I remember when I finished my undergraduate, my lecturers actually called me back and asked me, so what are your plans? At that time, you know, for people who've done exams, when you just finished exams, you don't want to be told anything about reading again. You feel, I am done. So when my lecturers called me immediately, I said, just leave me. I'm not coming back. So they would tell me, oh, we want you to come and do your master's. We want to give you a scholarship. And my first reaction was actually resistance. But going to the marketplace and I think just taking a bit of time, I got time to think through my life and realized, actually, how can I leave such an opportunity to pass? So went back and said, oh, yes, I now want to consider that opportunity. So those are the people who mentored me. Am I mentoring people? Yes, I have people who are mentoring, and these are people who perhaps have just seen what, and I also would like to give credit to my husband. He really is great on mentorship. So we've got many young people who come and ask us, so how did you go about it? But the thing about mentorship is honesty. Sometimes we like to paint a flowery picture. We all have our skeletons somewhere. But sometimes we want to make it look like things have always worked. So in mentorship, you really just have got to be honest. So we've got people who come to our home. I've got students that I mentor at the university. So that has been the mentorship journey.
Okay. Now, Carol, I'm coming to you, and especially on the issue of the various levels of mentorship, whether executive, and it's because, first of all, you hold quite a senior position, you've seen it all. So at the business level, is there anything like mentorship? Is there, can a 50-year-old person be mentored? Can a woman mentor a man, or how does it go? So all those issues you're going to explain to us. But now to you, Dr. Gladys, yeah? Mentorship, as she has said, there must be some sort of willingness, mutual agreement for two or more people to work together, and especially on particular things. But one, there are many people who do not know even where to get mentors, or even whether they need one. You know, and especially for those of us who, like in my case, I looked for a mentor when I was, in fact, after university, when I was doing business. That is when I looked after living someplace where I met Major Kemeki. So that is when, because I found that business was quite hard. I needed someone who has understood the matrix of doing business, understanding how to run a company, how to do consultancy, what does it take, and all that. How do you pursue debts and all those things, yeah? But you realize that I didn't see it as a serious thing, as a great need. Growing up, we were told to work hard, and so you push the wall until it breaks. But it's possible for human vessels also to help you come up. Who should seek mentorship? How do I identify a mentor? And how do I work with this mentor? So who should seek mentorship? How do I identify a mentor? Or who is a mentor particularly? And how do I cooperate with them in terms of the various factors in that kind of a program?
That's a very interesting question, which I don't know if I have an answer. But I'll just say from my own experience, we should look for a mentor. I think you look for a mentor when you need a mentor. Otherwise, it would be like the case where you look for, I just want to be associated with Caro, and so I ask Caro to be my mentor. But really, what do I want from Caro? I just want the name Caro, and I just like, oh, Caro is my mentor. I wouldn't advocate for that. So the way, I'm just saying from my example, for me, I've had different mentors at different stages of my career. And I've always sought a mentor when I needed one. And I think it's really important because someone was texting me another time, because I normally do some mentorship as well. And a student was asking, can you be my mentor? And I just asked a very simple question, which someone asked me a few years back. What would you like me to help you with? Because you just can't say Gladys is my mentor. I won't also allow, right? I want to be, when I say this and this person I'm mentoring, what exactly am I doing to that student? Are we having call? And when we are talking, what are we discussing? And I think it should come from the need, and I think it should come from this other side of mentee, saying, I'm Gladys. Right now, I'm transitioning into, like we were discussing, I'm starting to transition into business as well. And so now I'm seeking people who can hold me hand. And I can say 1, 2, 3, these are 1, 2, 3 things that I want you to tell me. Share your experience, how you got into business, what are challenges, what can I learn from you? And I think that is, I feel like that way it's efficient and it's more useful. Otherwise, sometimes I feel like mentor and mentee terms are too heavy and vague. So anyway, we should look for mentorship. I think it's someone in need. So it could be you're looking to apply for scholarship. Look for someone to mentor you in application. Once you get the scholarship, that mentor might not serve the need while you are researching PhD, for instance. Maybe they don't have, or while you transition into industry. Gladys might not help you, but Caro can because she's been there. And so the way at least that's how I've handled it. But I know, again, I have to give a disclaimer that different people have different ways of going around mentee and mentor situationship. But I'm just sharing my own example.
Okay.
And how depends. So it depends what you want to get. So you could use LinkedIn, for instance. You just like check whoever meets the profile, or depending on what you need, right? And then you reach out to them and then like have a conversation, or sessions like this, or conferences. So places where you can connect with mentors. And it doesn't have to be mentor. I don't know if people feel the same, but I feel like mentor and mentee is too heavy. Like if someone tells me, be my mentor, I shrink. I'm like, okay, so what am I supposed to do tomorrow when I'm your mentor? But just people to support you along the way. So anyway, those are some of the how. And then how it works, I think it really depends on I feel like mentor-mentee is just like any other relationship. So how you handle your relationship is different to how I handle my relationship, right? If it's like a daily call, or like daily text, or like once a week email. So how the relationship, I think, will differ based on the duo. It's a duo relationship. And you discuss as a mentee, and mentor will say, I'm busy every week, once a week is when we can call. Or write me an email when you have a problem. So I think it's really diverse, just to say it's really diverse how it works, mentor, mentee, and how it works.
Okay, we'll come to the specifics like the scholarships, and you will explain extensively and especially because these are very, very important part of the academy, and but much more than that, are people being mentored without them knowing that they are being mentored? Because there are instances where Major Kemei may be my friend, and we talk occasionally, and he tells me, okay, Marco, what are you doing right now? I'm doing this. Okay, so if you're doing this, I think I can give you this contact. Try call this person and find out if you could get this opportunity. And so, is it possible to mentor people without them knowing? And it's because the approach to mentorship is what also scares many people. Ideally, as Dr. Kemei has explained, you need to be someone who has walked that journey, and so you share your experiences and solutions. But from my point of view, I see a bit where there is a point where you need to come to a point of resolution over certain issues that come as solutions. So what is the first step to seeking mentorship? Do you get the person who has walked that journey? How do you approach them? Where do you find them? Particularly for many people who are probably watching online and wondering, so where? Like, these people are very lucky, they're getting mentors everywhere. But where do I get one?
Oh my, I think, yeah, and I'm sorry if I'm overgeneralizing, but I feel like they're all over the place. You just have to be hungry, like really hungry. Like with LinkedIn, with YouTube, with sessions like this, right? Like if you are seeking a mentor, you would go to conferences, you would write emails, you would be on LinkedIn. So in terms of like how someone can get a mentor, I think there are many ways. You just have to be really hungry and then seek out. Even if you are in uni, for instance, there are hundreds of lecturers, right? You just have to take yourself and then explain what your problem is or the area you want to be mentored in, right? But I feel like as a mentee, because it's so hard for me to go around saying, can I mentor you? Can I mentor you? It's weird. It's really weird, right?
Or so can you mentor me? Can you mentor me?
Like me asking as a mentor, can you be my mentee? Yeah. I feel like it's weird, and I feel like it's natural to come from the other side. And so as a mentee, I think there are a million ways to get your mentor. You just have to be serious and hungry, like really hungry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Looks like some sort of marketing.
Like when I say hungry? Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Can I please comment about
please,
that?
please do. Please.
I really like that about you've got to be hungry.
Yeah.
Because many years back at the University of Nairobi, we tried this mentorship that I can say was forced mentorship, where students were assigned to lecturers. You know, like you get a list of students and a list of lecturers, then say student 1, 2, 3, you're mentored by Peggy. And the kind of, and I think there was even somewhere they were supposed to sign to just show, because everybody was trying to figure out how can we do this mentorship. And the kind of things we had, that program could not go on. In fact, sometimes I get the feeling students would probably go and meet in the hostels and then discuss what's the most ridiculous thing we can go and tell the mentor tomorrow. I mean, I remember a young man coming to my office and telling me, I feel like making love at 3 in the night.
All right.
I'm supposed, so I just looked at him and I told him, go to the dean of students. Because I'm thinking, because we didn't define what is the scope of this mentorship, and it was forced. And when I went to think, and when we even talked with my colleagues, we felt that this student was actually just passing a protest vote that you guys are insisting on mentoring us and we don't want to be mentored. So when it comes from the mentee, then it becomes relevant because they know what you want, what they want to get from you.
Yeah.
So it really is important that the mentee is hungry for that mentorship. You cannot force it.
You know, it's the same in corporate. So I've had situations as well where there's that matchmaking. And I'll tell you, after the first interaction, there's no chemistry, it's not clear, so you just pack it. And maybe I'll just add a few comments around the other ways to find mentors. So I've been involved in, I would say, formal kind of setups where, you know, people are in a program. So there are many programs that run. I've been involved as a mentor with Yali. I don't know, most of you would know about it. Yes. So usually those would be very specific. You have a time limit on how long the mentorship is and exactly what you're talking about. So, but in most cases where I've been a mentor, it has to come from the mentee what they want. What is this that you want from me? Sometimes, you know, it's learning how to apply for the first job, how to build confidence, whatever it is. I just recently concluded a mentorship program with IFC. They're running a program with women in renewable energy, and this was a 6-month program. And so there was a pool of mentors and there was a pool of mentees, and they were matched. So the first conversation, you know, you meet your mentee and you ask, what do you want from this mentorship? You agree then the terms of engagement, what exactly you will be working on, the frequency of meetings, and those kind of things. And again, the mentee has to be flexible, especially when you're dealing with a mentor who is very, very busy. And so many times we have to change the times for calls because the schedules keep changing. And as a mentee, because you're the one in need, then you must be able to drive the conversation. And I find myself all the time coming back to the mentee to say, hey, at the beginning we discussed this. You know, how do you feel based on the discussions that are progressing? And I always find that mentees are not very clear on what they want. So at the beginning you discuss this, these are the specific things I need. But as you continue sharing stories, then they start to follow the path that you're going instead of bringing you back to say, hey, but this was the original idea. And I always find myself coming back to the original objective and say, so are we still on track? And you see, if you find many mentees just get derailed, and at the end of the engagement, if it was a formal, then they don't really have exactly, or well, they'll find other things, but is it exactly what they wanted? So that's what I have found. Yeah.
Are there levels of mentorship where we can say mentorship at family level, mentorship at school level, mentorship at corporate level, mentorship at global level? Do we have, and can we have mentorship at organizational level where another organization nurtures, one organization nurtures another one? So could you just walk us through those levels of mentorship and how they apply to various categories of persons in the society?
So I'm very practical, and I will not try and give you an itemized list. But in fact, I was in the middle of writing an article today on who do you look up to. I always say, if you answer that question, then there you are, and who do you look up to in this particular thing? So if I say, for example, in the political world, who do I look up to, then I would probably reach out to that person to build a certain skill set that I need. So I think mentorship is alive every day, and everybody will always, if you have a growth mindset, then there will always be that element in your life that you feel is lacking, and you might see somebody who has it and you'll be like, I would like to hear from that. So personally, I'm constantly seeking mentors. Even today, I seek mentors. So I know that I need to learn how to do, for example, how to navigate the political environment in corporate. And there are certain people in corporate that do this with a lot of ease. So I seek them out. And this is where, of course, the higher you go, the more harder it is to find these people, not the people themselves, but the availability to have those kind of conversations, because you can imagine how many people are reaching them, out to them to mentor them. So you have to be very specific when you request. I am very excited about this. Let me give you an example. I attended a conference early in the year, and one of the ladies who was in the panel, just shared her story, and I was so fascinated by her career path. And I said, I like that path, and I want to learn how she transitioned from corporate to running her own business. And I didn't even have her number, because I just went to LinkedIn, connected with her, sent her an inbox and said, I would like to meet you for breakfast to discuss this. And that mentorship has become, it has really become something very interesting. And the first day we met, it was someone I hadn't met at the conference. I had watched her make a presentation just like this panel, reached out to her later. We had the first breakfast, the second breakfast, and we continued to engage. She's extremely busy. So I have to be flexible to fit her schedule. And when she says come for breakfast at 7, I will show up. If she says come at whatever time, I will come, because I'm the one who is in need. And I do exactly the same to my mentees as well. So I say across the you know, when you're a child, when you're in the university, when you are working, when you're a you're junior in the work environment, or you're in academia, you would really be seeking, if you, again, looking at what you want in your life, areas of growth, you would constantly be seeking mentors. Yes.
Dr. Peggy, what, out of your experience, what are some of the common mistakes that mentees always project, especially to the mentors? What are, especially the assumptions that they come with as people who are coming to, whether especially the young people who are coming to a lecturer or who have for help, especially in mentorship?
I think, let me answer this as a lecturer. Usually you find that the students sometimes, when they come for mentorship, they actually confuse mentorship with you taking over the work. So if, for example, say our final year students do projects and what have you, so when you are trying to guide a student, then they would like you to kind of take over and do the stuff. I think one of the major problems that we're having right now is students just like to push over stuff, and then also the mass mentality. You know, I can call it peer pressure, but of course there is positive and negative peer pressure. So they like to compare themselves with, they meet and they feel, no, we cannot do this. Even when you look at university students stoning vehicles, for example, you will never find them stoning vehicles in their village when they are alone. Because they all come from somewhere. So when you all go to your different backgrounds, you don't get annoyed and decide now that you're going to stone vehicles. But when they have that group mentality, then they get the group energy to veer off the path. So for example, they can all decide we're not coming for an exam. And they feel safe in numbers because they say, if we all don't show up for this exam, then somehow it will have to be rescheduled. And we've had a couple of that at the university. So I think the biggest mistake is we forget that we are individuals. So we want to hide in a crowd to do the things that are not really right. And we forget that eventually we go back to, yes, you will say you're this class, but when you get your grades, you get them alone. When you're going to be job hunting, you're going to be job hunting alone. When you're going to be, so you cannot always hide in that mass. So I think that's one of the really important things that students need to realize, that when all is said and done, it is me. What do I want?
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it possible for a mentor to tell a mentee, no, I'm ending this program, and when they're told that, what should they carry home as a lesson?
What should the mentee carry home
as a lesson, especially when they're told that, no, I can't continue this program? Especially, for example, for the young boy who came to you and told you that he's interested in some other things at 3 a.m.
Yes, actually, for that particular case, I just sent him to the university structure, which would then be the dean of students. Then also just raised it in a meeting, and I said, is this program working? And I think because I was really hard on the young man, he never actually ever came back for mentorship after that. I think that was our last session. And I think many mentorship programs just die a natural death. When it is not achieving what it is supposed to be achieving, then the mentee stops looking for the mentor stops. So sometimes there isn't really a formal exit clause that we are ending this relationship. It's just that the two of you stop.
Naturally.
Yes.
Okay.
But I would also like to add that for me, when I have achieved what I want from a relationship or a mentorship, then, you reach a conclusion and say, I think, this has been very useful. I will reach out to you again in case I need more support. So it's sort of, you're not quite ending it, but you're taking a pause. And then, of course, most of the time, like Dr. Peggy is saying, it will die a natural death. Yeah.
Now I want to come to you, Dr. Gladys, and particularly on the substance of mentorship. The substance of mentorship in this case, whether we are talking about very, very specific things that I want to achieve within a very short period of time. And I don't know whether that also can be classified as part of mentorship or it's just helping someone. But for example, you've been privileged to get some scholarship, I too, from high school. And for me, a brother had to come and help me just fill the name. And at some point I was even tensed. I misspelled my own name at some point because it was like, this is how you should do it, yeah? My elder brother. So there are very, very specific things that someone may be pursuing in life. So whether it's scholarship, there are many, many hundreds or possibly thousands of scholarship opportunities in the world. One is, if somebody needs such opportunities, can they seek a mentor to help them get that, achieve that? And two, how should they go about it in finding the right person to help them? I know you've touched about that a bit, but most importantly, failure. How should they handle failure in any mentorship program? And you will also talk about these too, whether at corporate level or at personal level. How these people, our mentees should handle failure in the event what you are seeking did not really materialize. Yeah.
I think the first two questions will go back to what I had said, right? About, there is this student, and let me use an example of scholarship, because I applied, when I was applying, it was the most ambitious scholarship I ever applied. Applying from JQuat bachelor's degree, I was applying for a scholarship to do PhD. It was like shooting for the moon. Anyway, so let me just use that example, because it was time specific. Because once I got the scholarship, that was the end of mentorship. And you touched on a very good point, and that's why I don't like using mentorship. I feel like we should change a bit, because it's really helping. Like when you say Caro is mentoring me, what is she doing, right? She's helping me, right? And I think if we use help, it's even easier. Because now you're saying, Gladys, help me, and I'll ask with what? And it becomes easier. So I want to say, when I was applying for that ambitious scholarship, it actually came, the suggestion for me to apply came from a classmate. And in this case, I write about him all the time. I have 2 books and I've wrote about him, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that classmate to say, Gladys, there is this scholarship. And when I scanned the class, I think you are the only one who can get it, because they were looking for 3 specific things, and I could tick all those 3 easily. And it was a classmate who told me, a friend, right? And so in this case, I want to say he was my informal mentor, right? Because I knew nothing about scholarships. And so the first question was, so where do I get the website, right? And when he was suggesting, he knew that I was hungry and I was looking for scholarships. Every day we used to go to Pavilion at JQuat. I don't know, kama Wi-Fi imefika everywhere, but at that time it was only at the Pavilion. Every class, evening, you go to mess, eat your supper very quickly, go to Pavilion, looking for I was looking for, trying to apply and looking for scholarships, but I didn't know how to go about it. I was even, I was just skeptical about the entire thing. You just apply for this thing and people give you money. Why? You know, but I think we are now warming up to the idea of online things and applying. But anyway, just to say, I'll just go back, allow me to go back to the point of saying you have to be hungry. And if you are applying for scholarship, if you are at the place where you're considering to apply for scholarship, really, Like Google is the first cousin, the first sister or brother to help you. You just Google, how do people get a scholarship to go to UK? And you'll get million results, right? So that could be the first. But you will only do that if you are hungry, right? Or you go to vloggers. There are vloggers who are writing and talking about their experiences. I don't want to say million of them, but so many of them. LinkedIn, do you have a profile there, right? Even Facebook or Twitter, how professional is your profile when you are reaching out? I think the only problem is just hungry and people are not serious. Otherwise, the solutions are everywhere, really, if you ask me, right? So I hope that answers the question of where do people get, right?
Exactly.
Just Google is the first place. Reach out to people on LinkedIn. In uni, especially if you are in uni, or if you're not in uni, you are in a community. You have siblings, or you have neighbors, or if you are in corporate, you have people, so many people in that office and other departments. I think you just have to come out and say this is what I want, and seek out. I'm sure you will get it. And in terms of, you asked how you handle failure. Failure, if you, for instance, if you do fail with the scholarship application. Okay, I might be biased because when I applied, I got the scholarship. So most of my advice, people say I'm biased because I got it. If I had, actually no, I actually missed a couple. Maybe 3 that I really wanted, and then I missed because I couldn't meet criteria. Some I couldn't do the interview and all that, and then I finally got one. But I want to say how to handle failure. We have to acknowledge that failing is part of life, and you are not special if you fail. And so if you let it stop you, then you were really not passionate, or you are really not very serious about what you're looking for. Let me give, I normally like giving this vivid analogy, and I don't know if you guys at Alliance or privileged schools had this story.
The Alliance
but
community.
we used to have these long queues in high school.
Yes.
Sunday afternoon was like, everyone was hungry, stomach-wise. And would be queuing. And then the rice, the line would be this long. And you hold on your position in the queue like a soldier.
Religiously.
Right?
Yes.
If someone called my name, I wouldn't even listen because I'm hungry and my eyes are there until I get my rice, slice of rice and beans on Sunday afternoon, right? And if someone takes me out of the queue, will I give up and say, you know what, the queue is too long, let me just go to, no, I'll come back, I'll queue from the last until I get there. If they don't serve me, I'll go to the headmistress, I'll do what, because I'm hungry and these guys are not serving me food. And I feel like we are entitled so much nowadays, and you get one failure, you're like, you know what, this thing is not for me, I'm not lucky. But if you're really serious, you will jump over, you will go over, you will push, but you will get there. Yeah, is what I think about failure and how to navigate it.
Good, great. So, that's a very, very powerful point, by the way. I really appreciate, and it's because for someone like me, I've largely been helped by people. But the first scholarship that I got was by Jomo Kenyatta Foundation. And I thought that it was Kenyatta's family's foundation. So for a long time, I loved President Uhuru Kenyatta, or the former President Uhuru Kenyatta. And I prayed for him so much, thinking that was a scholarship by the neighbor. Kumbe, it was the Ministry of Education. Either way, it was still a great experience that I have had. So, but there is always failure in life. At some point, life raises resistance against people, and at some point, you have to make a few steps back, get yourself, as they say, pick the pieces and mold yourself back together. But so, for Carol, at corporate level, and especially the level in which you are, you can still talk about the other levels. But at corporate level, how do you handle a mentee who is obviously failing? They're obviously going to fail. How do you bring them back if they continue on that path? I mean, You may laugh, but the truth is that I've also been a lecturer. I've taught students, and I know some that are obviously failing and will continue to fail if something doesn't happen in the process, yeah? So, and it's sometimes very hard to tell them that, you know, you are failing, or this thing, just forget about it.
You know, I recently had an interesting experience. This is not corporate, but I'm going to share it because it's relevant to failure. Last weekend, actually, I attempted to summit Mount Kenya. And, you know, we had one of the members in the group that got serious altitude sickness. But still, on the day of the summit, they wanted to go to the summit. So after 200 meters, you know, the body could not move, and they gave up and said, you know, I can't. See, sometimes you have to allow people to experience the failure so that they realize for themselves that it's not working. So you can't sort of tell someone there's a ditch up there. You can only tell them, and if they don't listen, you allow them to go, and then they see it for themselves. So this is what I have, you know, learned over the years, that you can share your experience, you can share with people the pitfalls, you can narrate your story, and you hope that in your story, somebody will be smart enough to pick some lessons and to also see potential areas of failures. Smart mentees would actually ask, for example, I'm facing this challenge, how do I overcome it? That means they are willing to get themselves out of the failure. And I go back to the point that Dr. Gladys mentioned of being hungry. When you're hungry, you can see where the food is. And so even if there's a fence, you will figure out whether to go under or above to go and get it. So failure is a part of life. Failure for me is actually what makes us better. Because when you fail, then you know what not to do again. Because you've learned one way not to do it. And so you will try again a different way and a different way. And by all these experiences, you definitely become a better person. And you sort of, you know, consolidate that over the years and become better and better along the way. Yeah.
Can I also add amazing point?
Yes.
We were writing an article with a friend, and they forced us to write about our failures in graduate school.
Yeah.
Because every time I'm like, I'm University of Oxford graduate, and people think it was like straight path. So anyway, we were forced to sit down and go through our emails and write about failures. And there is this fellowship that I applied every single year, and the reason why I'm raising this is because you mentioned about failure, and I want to use an example of if I apply for a scholarship this year and I don't get it, do you call it failure? I think we call it failure. You also feel like you failed, right? But there is a reason why you didn't get it. Sometimes it's just like your CV was not very well brushed or something like that. So anyway, there was this fellowship that I applied every single year, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, I didn't get it. But I used the teachings, every time they wrote back to me, they told me I needed to add something, I needed to change my CV format. In 2019, with all the things that those guys gave me, I applied for Schmidt-Sand's fellowship. Now this is the vehicle that took me to MIT.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think if you continue persisting, there is a lesson every time. And if you keep waking up, you can actually use all those learning and all that grit, and it can take you to another step.
I want the online audience is really active over here, and I'll pick a few questions from them, and I'll share with you. But I just want to give two people a chance to, among the audiences, to ask a few questions. Be very specific, and to the person you are asking, introduce yourself, and then we can proceed from there. So can I see any hands? Anyone who would like to ask a question? Then we will proceed. We will come back to this. Don't be shy. There is no need for being shy. You can. Okay. Pass the microphone. Just introduce yourself and then ask your question. Also identify the person you're asking, whether it's the entire panel or a specific person. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Anne Mula. I'm an engineer too. So it's to Gladys, but feel free to answer. on failure, because it's the most recent one, she's mentioned when they get back to you in terms of improve on this and this. What of the opportunities where you keep trying and no one gets back to you, so you don't really know what you're doing wrong? Like, what are the ways you can improve yourself to be able to get those opportunities? Thank you.
Any other person in the audience asking a question? Okay, here, over here, over here, over here.
Hi, my name is Marian Colette, and I'm in corporate. So I'd like to ask Carol, maybe you can give us a background of your journey as you rose through the corporate ranks. What did you do to get where you are? And what's one takeaway that you'd like someone to have as they start their career?
Great. I'll give you a chance to answer the questions. I'll start with you.
Oh, okay. So Anne is asking a question of, no one is telling you what the problem was with your CV or your application materials. I suspect that there are people who've gotten it, right? So I think the first thing that comes in my mind is seeking out those people through whatever medium, right? Seek out to those who got it and ask them how did they apply, and if they have any tips and strategies on how you can repackage yourself. I think is what comes on top of my list.
So
It does. I'm not sure if that answers. You don't sound.
Yes.
Yes.
Because what if you tried that too?
You've tried that too. Okay. Carol wants to say something.
Yeah, and you know, the truth is that there are millions of Kenyans in this country who are really qualified
Yeah.
and very smart. And they don't just get a chance. And there are very minimal opportunities in the country today. So more than just seeking these opportunities, what is a balanced life that an individual, a young person or an older person can seek? What is a balanced approach to life? So that if one door closes, how do you open another one? I think that is part of the mentorship programs or mentorship generally in the society. Yes. How do you open another door when every other door is closing on you?
Okay, I'll say one point, and then I think Carol wants to add.
Yes.
So I want to say, if there are no opportunities in Kenya, go out of Kenya. If that is not an option, try something else. I think if you, like for instance, if you are applying for a job, I tell people and they get surprised. With first class in mechanical engineering, I didn't get a job. Or rather, like there was this graduate program at Shlumba, and we were recruited, but then they were not hiring anymore, and so we didn't get, right? So for 8 months of my life, I didn't have a job with first class in mechanical engineering. Actually, very, very strong first class. I had for 84 points, right?
That's great.
I didn't have a job. And when I say that people get, anyway, in Kenya, maybe not so surprising, but I did online writing, right? For 3 months, I was like, you've got to do whatever you've got to do. Go home, do farming. Go muturwa, nunua nguo, sell. You can just do something. Someone said, I actually ended up, I worked for I&M Bank for like 4 months. Mechanical engineer, I was learning banking, learn something. I feel like if you're really hungry, and someone said, and I like quoting these, and I think that is what we are lacking. I mean, obviously we have problems in our system, but I feel like part of the problems is also on us, right? Someone said the best way to keep a bicycle stable is cycling it. And so if you don't have a job, just be doing something, just be cycling. It doesn't have to be going that direction, but just be cycling. And then over time, it becomes stable and you just like reroute, right? So anyway, so if this door closes, you look for another one. Engineering door for me, mechanical engineering didn't work out. I went to banking. And then the bicycle kept going. And then I ended up quitting and then went to the UK, did a doctorate, and then now I'm working in engineering, right? So anyway, again, I'm biased. That was my experience, but I feel like we just have to be hungry and then just be versatile. And I think you had mentioned versatility, and I think that is what we want to encourage.
I think you're very right. As I was coming here, I have a list of preachers that I sometimes listen to. And one person was saying, one preacher was saying, as I was coming here, that God found people when they were doing something. God called Peter when he was fishing. God called who when he was doing something. Daniel was in the temple. And that thing really reflected up in my life. And I realized that probably the people I'm going to meet, especially the young people, the audience, that they have never tried something in their lives, when they fail, they may realize that there is nothing else to try. But it's not true. It's not true. Greatest discoveries have been made out of nothing, basically. People who are just trying something out of nothing. So I hope that answers you greatly, yeah?
You feel answered, Anne?
Yes.
Okay.
Welcome.
I think it's a good transition to respond to remind me your name. And no, the lady behind Maria. Yes, Maria. So it's a good transition to answer that question. And you know, they always say, what do you do in the hallway when you're waiting for the next door to open? You could stand and stare at a door, or you could be walking the hallway. You might discover a window or something else. I think for me, when I look at people at this age, I consider the opportunity so immense, because I see technology as brought, I would say, a flat space, and it's really up to you to find things to do online. There's plenty to do. You can create content. You can do so many things as you wait to find whatever dream you have. But if you sit back, I know that many people, I see many parents today coming to me, chasing me with CVs of their children to find them jobs. And I keep asking them, where are these children looking for the jobs? Why is it that the parents are the ones carrying around the CVs and not the children? Because even when I want to have a conversation to find out how this child is, what do they want to do, the parent cannot answer those questions. They just know the child graduated from university with whatever degree. But if you want to understand the interests of the child, they are nowhere. So I always tell them to come to me. We have a conversation on just basically even just figuring out where to start. And I can tell you 99% of them, they never come.
Yeah.
I don't see the children. So I think we've also then, as maybe the parents, taken over the responsibility of putting the food on the table, including the job for the child on the table. So you take them to school, you put food on the table, and until the responsibility of finding the job comes from the child, for me, it's you could be lucky, your parent could be well connected and you could get the job, but will you be inspired to do that job if you didn't work for it? But to answer your question, Maria, so I actually did, I took a very similar, maybe not similar, very different path. But when I got out of university, I would say I was one of those lucky people that I did not tarmac. I had gotten an award at the university with Safaricom when I was in my 4th year, and that award was going to allow me to take an internship. So I actually went to work in Safaricom when I was still staying at my college hostel. And while still, doing that internship, I was interviewing for different jobs, and my first job was with KPMG. And I remember going, to start working at KPMG with a degree in engineering. I had not even graduated, by the way. And, I am in an audit firm. I have no clue what happens there. I mean, the first job you do was to do a bank reconciliation. I had never done any bank reconciliation anywhere. But I had to learn. And I did that job. But then quickly I discovered, okay, maybe quite misplaced here. Let me continue finding jobs. And I continued interviewing, and I was lucky to join Unilever in a graduate trainee program. Then they used to call it management trainee program. But because I had been to KPMG, when I went to Unilever, the managers there told me, no, you already have a finance affiliation. And in any case, at that time, the CFO of that organization was an engineer. So they told me, you can take this path. And so I had to then do finance qualifications. And so I found myself doing SCCA. For many people, they used to struggle to do SCCA, but I think after studying engineering, it was probably a lot easier. So I did it in a very record short time. came as top student in some papers in the country, but and I was doing that while working, and I was a young mother as well. And then I left Unilever after about 4.5 years and went to join GE, and I went to GE in a finance role. Then around that time as well, I went back to do my master's. And so I was doing my master's as a part-time because I was already working. So I went to Strathmore to do my master's, and after 1 year of master's program, I said, I'm sitting on potential here. So I dusted my engineering degree and said, okay, I think I can try a technical role. So I went into a techno-commercial role at GE. It is very unusual for someone to move from finance to a commercial role. But I took the risk. So one of the things I would say is, for me, it was the willingness to take the risks, and it was really a gamble, because this is 7 years into my career, and I'm moving to a completely different world. I have no clue what's going on there, and it took a lot of learning really fast. And I'll say really that probably helped me to propel me faster to the top, because then I had this background in finance, I had this technical background in engineering, and now I'm now building this background in commercial. And that just became one job after another, and found myself at the top. And all those skills that I learned consolidate. In my current role, I use everything. I use my finance background, I use my selling background, I use my technical background. And it just came together, not by design, by accident, I think.
Okay, thank you so much. So we will take more questions, but I want to ask Dr. Peggy a very important question. Is there anything like unhealthy mentorship? And I'm just wondering, can you mentor a 50-year-old man or a 60-year-old man? And I'm giving that example to help you define if there is anything like unhealthy mentorship that you should just probably not consider. And especially, we are not just ourselves, but we are our families, our children, our husbands, our everything else. So we are representation of so many other things to us. So even when a mentor and a mentee are considering any program or any arrangement, should they also look out for anything like unhealthy mentorship that should be dropped immediately?
It's interesting that you ask me that question when I have, I think, 2 of my PhD students are actually approaching their 60s. And I think when the objectives are very clear, then all those barriers do not come into play. But yes, there is unhealthy mentorship. In fact, I prefer to call it toxic. Because if the objectives are not very clear, or if the parties are not willing, I mean, sometimes, especially even in the university setup, we've had, say, senior people who kind of want to impose mentorship on you because they feel they've walked this journey and you should follow suit. But perhaps that's not what you want. But the good thing is, as long as your boundaries are clear, then that won't happen, because you just find a respectful way of just saying that I'm not ready for this at this point. So for unhealthy mentorship to sprout, then it means both of you, maybe one of you is not comfortable enough to just speak out. And it ends up being a journey of bitterness. And so I think it's just best to speak out, because mentorship is voluntary. You cannot force somebody to mentor another. So you just have to speak out and cut things.
How should a mentee, what should a mentee expect by the definition of the boundaries that these are the lines you should not cross? I mean, you're a mother, you're a wife, and regardless of what it is, you have specifications by timing to when you can attend to certain things and when you can't. What are some of the expectations by way of definition of boundaries in mentorship programs that any mentee should understand from the onset, that Now, these are, you know, I call it a wisdom factor, yeah? Understanding the wisdom of life, that this is now, you can't call me this number of times in a day or in a week or and you know, these are very small things. They look quite small, but they affect the entire outcome of that entire arrangement. Yeah.
I think communication is very key. You've got to really just make it very clear right at the onset, and I do that a lot with like the students assigned to me for projects. Because when you're doing a project with a student, then you've got to work very closely. So you make it very clear that my preferred mode of communication is this, email, or if you're comfortable, when do you use the phone, how should you use the phone, what language. For example, there's a language that I cannot stand. That language of sax, I don't even know how to pronounce it, but it's XAXA. I mean, the minute you start that way, I already just, I may not even understand what comes after that. So I make it very clear to my students, for example, that my preferred mode of communication is this. You're only allowed to use the phone if the lab is burning, for example, if it's an emergency. And how do I define an emergency? And then when the objectives are clear, of course, we are human beings. So in as much as this could be an academic mentorship, there are life factors that may affect your academics. You're having struggles at home. And it's just, I think for the mentor, you've got to know how much is too much, you know? So when you tell me that, yes, you're not able to buy food, I think that is okay, because then we can see how we can help in one or two ways. But there are things that then, you know, like what that student was coming to tell me about 3 in the night, then that is a boundary. So you've got to draw that line and say, no, this we are not going to discuss. So, and part of the mentorship is actually helping the person to grow, because they may not know that that is inappropriate. I mean, many students start off by giving me the XAXA kind of thing. I mean, I've had students calling me, then they tell me, oh, niaje, ni so and so. Then I'm like, who is that? I'm your student. Then I tell them, okay, let's meet tomorrow at this time. And when we meet, I've got to tell them, okay, by the way, we are preparing you for the marketplace. If you go to the marketplace and you call your boss and tell them niaje, if that was an internship, you already know that you're counting your days to exit. They might even just tell you, pack your things right now and go. But when this, I mean, for them, perhaps that is normal. They don't see anything wrong with niaje. But when you now inform them that that is not right, then the next time, because like even those niaje instances, usually they will come during the first few sessions. Then you tell them, okay, by the way, never ever tell me niaje. Never ever write to me an SMS in capital. Never. They may look like they're obvious, but that is part of the journey. I remember actually my PhD supervisor, Professor Kelly Chibale, could actually close his office and take a toothbrush and show somebody how to brush their teeth. I mean, you may think that is going overboard, but he'd notice this person is not brushing their teeth well. And he took it upon himself to help this person instead of gossiping to say, hey, you guys, keep off social distance, so and so. He wanted this person to become better. So he'll actually show you how it is done. Yeah.
Very, very, very good points. Very, very good points. Dr. Gladys, is there anything like mentorship by observation? Is it possible to watch somebody's life? For example, if I'm working with the soon-to-be Dr. Carol, and in her office setup, I can just observe her life and just observe how she carries herself, how she handles crisis, how she handles situations, and even more than that, even more than just at a glance kind of mentorship. Is it possible to receive mentorship by even way of online, where I can watch speeches, videos, whether they are preachings, whether they are explanations of technology, whether it's someone who had passed on, like Steve Jobs who invented things, and he's talking about how he overcame challenges, how he failed, how he was sent out of his company and then still come back. Can that still be grouped as, or can we categorize that as part of mentorship? And how best should people with such opportunities approach such scenarios or such kind of mentorship?
Oh, let me clarify. What do you mean by the second point? Like the people doing online?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right. So by observation, mentorship by observation, again, disclaimer is just using my example, right? And I think everyone has experienced this. And I want us, allow me to redefine the idea or the meaning of mentorship as helping, right? So I'll give you a very good example. And I think we don't talk a lot about finances and wealth creation. We are just taught in school where Soma, get A's, get a job. What do you do with your money? Do you just be paying bills and that is it? So I want to give, like, the way I personally learned, I'm still learning, right? The way I personally learned about like wealth creation and doing business or just managing your finances and money through a vlogger. And so they helped me, and I want to consider that mentorship, right? So if that is an example of someone helping you, I don't know them, they don't know me, but their videos were really amazing, and they were giving their own personal experiences, and they were saying, this is how much I was earning in this year, and this is what I did with my money, and now my wealth is like this, and this is what I'm continuing. And they really inspired me because I could see myself in their situation. And that's how I learned. And it changed how I was looking at investments and wealth creation, etc. And so that's just an example of a recent example where I want to say I got mentorship through someone I don't know, just a vlogger, right? So I want to say, yes, I think by observation. So watching someone or watching your siblings, like my brothers for sure, I keep saying the reason why I chose engineering was because of them. And so I watched them enjoy maths, physics, and enjoy engineering. And then subconsciously, I gravitated towards engineering. And that, I think that was also by observation. So I want to say yes. And I think all of us are, every day, we are mentored in that way through observing our parents, our siblings, our neighbors, our friends, and things like that. And then you asked, how do these people then approach that mentorship?
In terms of planning, in terms of planning and programming.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as a mentor approaching that, so I think just knowing, I would say because I know some people have told me they've been encouraged by my story, and I want to think I've kind of helped them or like mentored them by them observing my life. And so like I just try, so what I personally, this is my personal experience, I try to be vulnerable and say, okay, while we talk about the good things, there are also these downsides, and this is how I handle them. So that it's because assuming they are learning by observation, they've never met me, they watch my videos, and so I try to be as honest and as vulnerable as possible so that they can see themselves in my situation, and hopefully they can learn from my story.
Yes, Carol. The same question to you, especially in reference to your environment, work environment, which is the corporate world. How is this best approached? By just observing how people, and you know, companies do this a lot, especially at the corporate level. There are many products that you can trace to Apple, or many Samsung products that you can trace to another manufacturer. So they observe this, or the cars, whether they are the cars and all that. How can this again be translated into individuals' lives, whether in the corporate also?
So I think for me, I will share some of my experiences in corporate and where I've been observing how some people are doing. So I'll talk a lot about it from a leadership perspective. So I've had some amazing bosses, and I've also had some not so amazing bosses. And from both of them, I have learned. So I remember when I started working, you know, I used to struggle to write emails. I would wonder, where do you, because always I struggle, how do you communicate effectively by writing? And I started seeing how people frame their emails. So, you know, one of the observations I made was when you put an action against an email with a question mark or with a clear ask, then you get a quick response and a response and a move. So I started then changing the way I write my emails based on that. Or some bosses that, you could see how they handle certain leadership situations. So just by watching how, for example, how they run a meeting, how they handle a conflict, probably you're part of the team that is involved in this and you watch this guy, how they do it, and you're like, I like the way they do it, I'm going to do it like that. This is just by experience. And certainly there are those that you look at them and you're like, I'm never going to do that because that doesn't work. So then you learn how not to do certain things and you learn then the best practice for others. So I always say, whatever situation you're in is always a learning process. As long as you're open to learn, whether it's great or not great, you learn how to or how not to. Yeah.
So I think there is a question from one of the students here, and they're asking a question about when somebody sends you a text message of hi and nothing else follows. Yes, who is that? Was that question?
I actually wrote it too. Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
It's very common.
So it's very common. Yeah, and again, there are people who just do not respond, and especially making people understand. At your level, sometimes it's how do I say this without sounding funny? But what I'm trying to say is that there are many people that I would even text. I have friends who are probably directors in some other companies. I will even text that person on WhatsApp. It's a person I chat with. When he needs me to respond to something, I would respond. In fact, I take it as a privilege. Yeah, I'll immediately respond, even stop my car, and then just respond to that. If it's the other way around, then it's probably text, maybe some other minutes. How do you deal with such communication? Basically, you are being texted a lot, Dr. Peggy, because of your profession.
I'll be very honest with you.
Yeah.
When somebody sends a text, hi, I'm likely to ignore it. Because, you've got a busy schedule. So you do not know what this person, if somebody asks something, then you have a response to it. But sometimes somebody says hi, and if you even respond back hi, the next question is probably, how are you doing? So you're basically leading each other to a path that goes nowhere. So I think the best thing is just avoid sending such a text, really. Because to be honest, hi, I don't respond.
So hi is not a communication.
No, it is not.
You need to understand what is communication.
Yes.
What are you communicating?
Yes.
Yeah, and again, another thing is to understand that people can be busy, people may forget, and even the basic wisdom of life, just how do I remind this person? You may remind somebody in such a way, or even appreciate. There are things that I don't like at personal level, like, for example, when I've helped someone and they say thanks with some X somewhere between the lines, okay? So some of those things, they're very basic. But young people may not know, but they're called the soft skills. And so I just want you to talk to us about the soft skills of life, and especially not really to be specific to your industry, but these are soft skills in life that any person, any young person or an older person, there are people I know that you've rejected in an interview panel. They were qualified, but you just noticed that, no, I can't work with this one. This one will come and run down the company. Yes, some of those soft skills. Could you just help people understand the role they play in life?
So actually, this is quite a timely question because we are just about to hire graduate trainees in our organization. And usually for me, this is a very good experience because you see the CV of the person, and then when they present themselves in the interview, you struggle to reconcile the CV and the individual. Many people focus on building their papers, but they don't focus on building how to present themselves as an individual. So the paper that opens the door for you is not followed by a person that looks like the paper. And many people struggle especially to express themselves, to articulate who they are. So when you ask them, for example, I remember 2 years ago we were interviewing fresh graduates, and one of the questions we were asking is, tell us about yourself, or what project did you do at the university? And you know, this is someone who's just graduated, surely. You remember the project you did. Most of them were engineers. What project did you do? And some guy cannot even explain to you the project. So if you spent a whole year doing this project and you can't explain, how do you explain about, how do you express yourself as a person? So I think communication is very important. Very, very important. Not just communication, but understanding how to package yourself and really present yourself in front of a panel. Why should I hire you and not the other guy? You tell me why. You should be able to convince the panel. And I don't know where people learn these skills, but I think there's so much content, and also there's just a lot of people you can ask to help you prepare. How many people prepare when they're going for interviews? You don't prepare to say, these guys will ask me about an engineering, I don't know, Schrodinger equation or whatever that I learned many years ago. Many times we don't look for that because you've done that, we see in your papers. Now we want to see you, because when you come to the workplace, you're going to be working with people. And it's how you're going to relate with those people. What do you bring as an individual to the team? Are you going to be the toxic employee who is always constantly whining? Or are you going to be the source of positive energy? So those are the things that many young people need to prepare themselves. I'll tell you, when I was interviewing the first time, I was never this confident. I wasn't even so sure about some of the way, but clearly the people who interviewed me must have seen something. But over the years, of course, you hone the skills, you build your confidence. And I always tell people, when you're still a student, find opportunities that give you the chance to build the skills. If there's a club, be a leader. It gives you the opportunity to speak in front of people. You build your public speaking skills, and therefore when you present yourself in a panel, then you'll be able to be a better person. Or even if it is a conference, try and find an opportunity to be in a panel to discuss. It just builds little by little. And over time, you become very articulate, and when you speak, you convince. And unfortunately, the privileged, or is it fortunately or unfortunately? Unfortunately, many people who come from humble backgrounds, and especially the rural environment, miss the opportunity to be hired, especially by corporates.
True.
Not because they're not smart, but because they just can't present themselves. And they become frustrated, and they give up. But usually, if you find yourself getting invited to interviews and you're not getting selected, first thing you should check is, how am I doing from my presentation skills? How am I presenting myself and articulating, my skill sets? So those are some of the things that nobody tells you, especially if they don't select you, but it could be one of the reasons. At least that's what I see as the main reason why we don't hire people.
Very important, very, very, very important. We want to close the discussion. But before we go to the parting shots from the panel, I want to give one last chance to a few individuals to ask last questions. Then I'll just come back to them, and then we will wind up. I think we've had, this is one of the most intelligent conversations I've had in my entire life. And I'm so privileged. So do not waste this chance. You can ask your questions. Yes? I can see another hand there. So we'll start with her, and then we will proceed to him. You could come closer when she has finished. Yes.
Hello, my name is Sumaya from Pharmacy from UON. So my question is, how do you deal with unhealthy or a toxic workplace, and you don't have another option to change? It's not like I've experienced this yet, but some of my friends have gone through that, are telling me how hard it is. So maybe when I experience that, not when I haven't done it, but maybe how to deal with that toxic workplace. Another question I had, so I'm a very strong believer of preparing for the future. So how would you invest later in life, and how to manage your finances? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that question goes to who?
The whole time.
Oh, the whole panel. Okay, thank you. We can pick another one from there.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Nico. And I have a question for the panelists. How do you deal with the process of transition from school to corporate, or even from corporate to furthering your studies? Because most of you, like from your stories, you moved from, it might seem rosy for all of us to hear, oh, I finished in JQuad, then I moved, I went to Oxford. Yeah, there's a process of transition between that, and then sometimes the transition process can be long for others, it can be short for other people, and during that process, it can be consuming. Your thoughts can consume you. You might have a lot of ideas. Things during that process are normally not very rosy. There are many thorns during that process. So how do you deal with that process of transition?
Okay. Okay, one more.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Sharon. I'm a student, and my question is on mentorship, and anyone can answer. So I was wondering whether it's okay to have more than one mentor in the same field. I'm asking this because I've had a mentor before, and one of the things she told me in our preliminary meetings was that if I ever consider having a mentor in the same field, I should let her know, because along the way there could be contradiction. What she's telling me and what the other mentor is telling me is actually different. So I need to tell her and let her know how we can proceed from that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you so much. So we have 3 questions from 3 young people. So thank you so much. I think on whether you need to have more than one, we will give it to Dr. Peggy, will handle that. So take it up.
Okay, I think with mentorship, for me, I don't see anything wrong with having more than one mentor, because we are very clear about the objectives. So you might find something that you'd like Gladys to mentor you on, and you might find something else that Carol can mentor you on. But it's very important that if the mentor actually specified that he or she would like to be told, then it's just in order that you inform them, because even in this mentorship, there is no one size fits all. We are human beings and everybody operates in their own style. So perhaps for that particular mentor, that is how they work. And for you to approach them to be your mentor, there must be something that you saw. So you just comply. If ever you need another mentor, inform them. Yeah.
Okay, I think that is well answered. So please take the next question from the gentleman, the guy who mentioned that he doesn't understand how there is this transition period and it takes a bit of time for others. Others are quite lucky. I don't know whether it's luck or many other factors combined. So you could answer that.
Oh, so on transition, my take on transition is the same as failure. I think as long as you are moving and you are ambitious in life, transitions are going to be a lot. So I think the first thing is acknowledging that it's okay, and you are not the only one transitioning. Everyone is transitioning. It could be career, it could be relationship, it could be anything else. But I think as long as life is moving and you are growing, transitions will happen. So I talk a lot, so there is a book I wrote, it's called The Bold Dream. And like I mentioned, as long as you're ambitious and you are having bold dreams, those for sure, those transitions and scary moments will be there. And in that book, I talk vividly and vulnerably and honestly about one night when I slept, and in the morning, I wanted to turn down the PhD offer. Because I was just like, what did I just do? JQuad BSc, and I want to do a doctorate at the University of Oxford. And I wanted to write an email. But anyway, it's a very long story, but just to acknowledge that while you are transitioning, and while you are making that step, the bigger the step, the bigger the anxiety and the fear, and that is just part of the package. And I think just acknowledging that those things will be there. So that time I was still young in transitioning, because since I went to primary school, I had never had any major transition. Just like the high school, primary to high school, which everyone does, and then high school to uni, everyone does. And I'd never had a major transition like that in 2014 and 2015. That's when that transition happened. So I like to give that as an example because that was the first massive step in my life. I'm happy in hindsight that I did take a leap of faith and some courage and said yes to the opportunity, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that transition, that scary transition. So just to say, as long as you are making a move, the bigger the move of the transition, the fear and all anxiety will be there. And so just, and also it's a muscle, because now that was in 2015, 2014. Right now I'm also making a massive transition from my previous role to something else. I'm scared, but not as scared as when I was in 2014. Because sometimes this thing happened, like even in relationship, when my relationship ended, the character development, I was like, this is the end of the world. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. And then after 2 weeks, 1 month, 1 year, you're like, why was I crying? And also like even in career, when I look back now, I'm like, why was I losing sleep about the offer? It wasn't too scary. Like it was scary at the time. And I think also the amygdala, the part of the brain that kind of helps us, amygdala, that helps us to remain evolutionary, right? So that you are not taking yourself to problems. So sometimes when that wire is going, hey, it's actually just normal evolutionary. It's not like it's really scary. And we think that there is fire over there, but it's just the brain kind of playing magic. So anyway, how to handle transition, just acknowledge that as long as you are moving, transitions will be there. And just learn to be okay, make peace with that anxiety and fear, and just know that it's a muscle. The more you push yourself to the edge and make those transitions, the more you become solid and learn how to navigate them.
Thank you so much. So, Ms. Carol, you'll respond to the lady, and
so
yes.
you had two questions, and the first one was answered. The toxic workplace.
Yes, the toxic workplace.
Not yet. Okay.
You answered, because I think.
So you had two questions on the toxic workplace and investing, right? Very interesting questions, Sumaya. And toxic workplace. Personally, I cannot thrive in a toxic environment. So there are two things I can do. I can change the environment, either by bringing whatever I have to offer to the place to make it less toxic. And if that cannot change, then I have to change myself by removing myself from that environment. And I always believe there are choices. You cannot say they don't have a choice. There are choices. Choices exist. And you make a choice to stay in a toxic environment because nobody ties you to a place. So until you have that understanding that there's power, it's the power that you give to that environment, and you also the choice you make to stay. If the environment cannot change, then you have to change yourself or remove yourself from that environment. That's what I would say. And sometimes also we like to become, we call them pity parties. We like to have victims crowded together and, talking about how bad this place is, and that is all we talk about. Guess what? It even becomes even worse because we are feeding that toxic environment by what we tell ourselves. And what we say to ourselves starts to become the truth. So that's just how the brain works. It's probably a conversation that we can continue with. It's probably a whole other 1 hour of discussion if I want to talk about. Investing is a very interesting topic. And for me, I think one of the things I have not mentioned in this panel, and I'm sure these ladies would say the same thing, is I am a lifelong learner and I read and read widely. So one of the things that probably I forgot to mention as a source of your mentorship is really from books, from what others have done before you, from the how-tos. There are many, many books. So on investing, I think for me it's really taking steps at every point in your life. So when you're starting your life, depending on what you choose to do. If you choose to go the entrepreneurial route, it is a different, monster altogether. If you choose to become a salaried person, it's a different thing. If you choose to have a side hustle with a salary, which is what most Kenyans are doing. So all those things mean that you approach finances differently, but always constantly learning, to be able to make sure that you're securing your future. At least the basics for me is usually ensuring that you have an insurance cover for your medical, making sure that you're contributing to a pension in whatever format you're in. It depends on how far you can take the insurance to have a life cover, in case you disappear and there are people depending on you, they will be able to continue living, and many other things. But always then learning to be responsible with your finances in terms of how you spend the money, how you save, where you invest, which returns, and there are many different asset classes that you can take. Someone shared with me recently, and I'll share with you, the periodic table of investing. I found it very, very fascinating. Yeah. So I can share that template, and you can have a look at it. They've put together all the different types of investing, from fixed income to real estate to bonds to shares to whatever. There are many, many classes. I don't think we can finish that class today. And I wouldn't say I'm an extreme expert, but I can have a conversation on that topic because of reading.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we are really coming to the tail end of this discussion, and I want just to give an opportunity to my panel to give their parting shots, and especially on the areas that probably we've not covered, that you probably think it's worth mentioning, and just to give a little encouragement to your, to the young people who are watching, or to anyone else. It doesn't have to be young people, and then we will come back and say goodbye. So I'll start with Dr. Rikeme.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this very interactive session and for the engaging questions. I think my parting shot is really, we need to kill the culture of bora uhai. That is about survival. You need to thrive. Let's not settle for mediocrity. Let's not settle for average. Work to be the best that you can be, not just to survive. Thrive in whatever environment that you are in. Thank you.
You so much. Thank you so much. Welcome.
That's really nice. Bora uhai.
Is it now? It should be Uai Bora.
Uai Bora is good.
Yeah,
but
okay.
Bora uhai is good. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Welcome, Doctor.
So me, I have two asks. Okay, so first of all, if you want to reach me, the best way to reach me is through my website, www.gladyschipkirui.com. So whatever, if you want to discuss mostly about scholarship, someone had asked scholarship links, I have 400 plus active scholarships. So I can send that gladly to you. So because mentorship, mentee relationship is give and take, and I've given you guys. So I have two asks from you. The first one is, if you like my story and you want to read more, I have two books, The Bold Dream and The PhD Journey. If you want to do masters or considering PhD, you can read more about my personal stories and tips and strategies of applying for scholarship, of thriving, or mostly abroad, because that's where I did my postgrad. And then number two, like I was telling Kipu, I'm currently going through transition. And I'm trying to wet my feet in entrepreneurship. And I'm building a startup. And the biggest question, the biggest scare at night, I'm like, am I building this thing and no customer will show up? But I'm also asking myself, is it worth not trying? But I want to try. So I'm building a startup. It's called Saidiwa Rides. So if you guys go to Saidiwa, like saidiwa.com, and download the app in early January, we'll be piloting SGR, from SGR to town, but it will be a taxi for, we like to call it's a marriage between Airbnb, for those who know, Airbnb, Uber, and Matatu. I'd really appreciate if you guys download it sometime end of December or January, and let me know what you think. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Welcome.
So for me, first of all, I'm really grateful for this opportunity, and I would like to say to the audience and those that are online, you know that each of us has a path. It will never be the same for all of us, but it is being intentional, that you can actually reach your destination. So I think sometimes we have to drive our destinies and not wait for destiny to drive us. It's by the decisions we make today that our lives turn out tomorrow. Thank you.
Can you just appreciate You've done a wonderful show. And thank you so much even for the audience, for the Kemei's family, for Major Kemei, for Peggy, for Dr. Gladys, for Carol. Thank you so much. May God bless you abundantly. And so we come to the end of this discussion, and we welcome you to watch as many times as you can. You can download the same video, especially on YouTube, where it's available. At the same time, you can also contact my members of the panel privately, if so need be, and especially for the ones that have availed their contacts. I think that is quite important. At the same time, immediately after this, we will have a short photography moment with the panelists, so you can also interact with them shortly before they can leave. I didn't know that this discussion would take this long, but it was quite interesting that stopping it was going to be criminal. Yeah, so I truly appreciate this, and especially the fact that, you know, just interacting with such brilliant people. You know, sometimes we do host discussions, and sometimes you find people really struggling even to communicate the things they have learned, they have done. But for this panel, it was quite a ride of my life. Thank you so much. This was so easy. And anytime you want to do this, let me know. I'll be here. Thank you so much. May God bless you. And my name is Mark Obar.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you
Very much.
Hi.
So we'll take a photo.
You are a very good moderator.